I'm tired today. Good morning, everybody. How are we doing today? We having a good time? Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. It is my birthday today, which is pretty fun. To celebrate, I'm going to run a writing stream. No, I celebrated this past weekend and it was wonderful. What I need now are topics for YouTube videos. I am woefully behind on my YouTube videos. And I want to make sure that I'm managing some of that stuff. So the question is, what should I be? Oh my goodness. Character development. It's a good idea. Yesterday was a pretty good writing day. I hit my goal, which was fantastic. Today, we're going to try to push it a little bit further. I'm trying to focus on being consistent in my writing, rather than trying to necessarily get extra writing done. But man, am I tired. Oh, I'm glad. Yeah, hopefully you enjoy that series. It's been super fun to it's been super fun. How's everybody doing this morning? All right. I'm moving slow too. Ooh. All right. I'm going to go use the bathroom really quick, and then I will be back, and we're going to start this. I am taking suggestions. You can drop them in the chat for videos to do. I was mentioning at the beginning of the stream that I am way behind on videos for YouTube channel. So if you have any suggestions, character development was tossed my way, and I really like that. I'll probably do a video on character development. But give me 1 sec. I'll be back, and we'll get started with our writing. So I absolutely did not turn on my mic. All right. So we got a question from chat. What do I like about third-person point of view better than first-person point of view? And before I give you my answer, this is 100% a preference thing. However, like most things in my life, I arrived at this conclusion after thinking about the subject at great length. Why is it that first-person point of view bothers me? And it really comes down to two reasons. And I don't necessarily expect other people to agree with these reasons, but they are my reasons. So the first is, and again, I want to stress that first-person point of view versus third-person point of view, it's just preference. I don't think that one is intrinsically better than the... That's a lie. I absolutely think that one is intrinsically better than the other. And I'll talk about why in a second. But I think that both are fine. You can write good stories in both first-person point of view and third-person point of view. However, I also believe that third-person point of view is intrinsically superior. As I started to say that previous sentence, saying that they're the same, I realize that it's not true. So, why is third-person point of view better? First of all, it's better because there isn't the risk of having an unreliable narrator. Okay, this is mostly a preference thing, but I really dislike it when I am not told the truth. Truth is something that is incredibly important to me, and it's part of my fundamental belief system that only by knowing the truth can you properly engage with life. Which means that if someone is lying to me over the course of a story, then I have gained nothing by the end of it. If I discover in the last pages that the narrator is unreliable, then I have gained nothing from it. Now, some people would argue that stories that have an unreliable narrator, their primary purpose is catharsis. I don't think catharsis is actually good. I don't think it's helpful for people. I think that it's actually a detriment to your life, catharsis is, rather than a benefit. Okay? Again, this is personal belief. So take it as you will. But if catharsis is the primary result of a book with an unreliable narrator, then I have just wasted my time if I read a book with an unreliable narrator. And so that is actually one of my biggest pet peeves, is getting through a book and realizing that I've been lied to. What's the point? What value does that bring me? What benefit does that bring to my life? Or how does that edify my mind? How does that improve my state in the world? It doesn't, right? So that's the first reason that I think that first-person point of view is not, or is inferior to third-person point of view. Now, can you have an unreliable narrator in third-person point of view? Sure, absolutely, you can. But it's much rarer, because a third-person point of view tends toward absolute knowledge, right? An omniscient narrator tends toward it. It's not always. So, in that case, I just don't like first-person point of view because it tends towards having that unreliable narrator. And even if it doesn't have an unreliable narrator, first-person point of view is told from limited perspective by necessity. And if it is told from limited perspective by necessity, then there is information that you are missing in the story. The you don't have the complete picture. You can never genuinely trust that what the character says is true. They might think it's true, but it might not actually be true. And so you get a stilted version of the story, right? Admittedly, I think that this part of my argument is just completely 100% preference, right? I understand that. So why then do I think that third person point of view is intrinsically superior? It's because it's less self-centered. So this, again, comes down to worldview. In order to write first person, you must focus on the individual, the main character. And the entire story is a practice in the word I. Everything revolves around a single individual. Everything revolves around their perspective of the world. And I think that is a dangerous practice in life. To spend a significant amount of time in self-focus doesn't, again, benefit you. And I think that reading first-person books trains people to think of themselves as the protagonist. But the reality is that none of us are the protagonist, right? Sure, you hear people say, oh, everybody's a protagonist of their own life. Not really. That's not actually true. Sure, you are yourself and you only have your perspective and you can only engage with the world through your perspective. But continuing to only engage with the world through your perspective and focusing exclusively on yourself as the main character leads to a stilted and sad life. Joy in life is found through other-centeredness. Connection in life is found through others-centeredness, right? In being external rather than completely internal. Obviously, you need to have some internal life, right? You have to have some sense of who you are. You have to have some sense of what you like. You have to have some sense of how you relate to the world. You have to understand how you feel about things. All sure. But the less time you spend there and the more time you spend turning outward and observing the world around you and engaging with the people around you and treating other people like they're the main character, the better your life is going to be. And so on a fundamental level, I genuinely think that first-person stories promote the wrong kind of thinking. They train us into the wrong mindset. That's probably not what you were expecting when you asked me my opinion on first person versus third person. Typically, I think most people just don't think about this beyond the fact that, like, I like it or I don't like it. Again, I've read first person, like, stories written in first person point of view that were great. They were fantastic. But all of them had this core piece of selfishness that I think is dangerous. And I think the more that we read stories that are first person, the more we train ourselves into a pattern of thinking that puts us at the center of all things. And that is a dangerous place to be. It is much better to consider yourself as part of the whole. It is much better to consider other people as just as important as you. And I think third person points of views allow us to hold that broader perspective of life. So that is my That's my rant. Again, caveat. It is okay to write in first person. There's nothing wrong with writing in first person. I would just encourage you, if you're going to write in first person, be aware of what it does to the story. Be aware that you are inherently giving the reader an unreliable narrator. Because all of us are unreliable narrators. You know, when I have conflict with my wife, I see things from my point of view. She sees things from her point of view. And both of us construct our own perception of the situation. And those two perceptions are distinct. They're different. And it's only by putting down my own ego and seeking to understand her perspective that I get to see a full picture of the situation and actually understand where I was right and where I was wrong in it. So that's why I think third person is better. And that's why first person grates on my nerves. Maybe I should do a YouTube video about that. All right. So, how's everybody doing today? I admit I'm not super excited about writing today. In part because I am very tired. I've been finding myself very tired this week. Still recovering from the weekend. But also in part because I just want to go play a video game or something. It's my birthday today, and I'm feeling lazy. I don't really want to do any work. We're still going to do some work. We're still going to run some sprints. It's going to be good. Night Ninja Gaming asks, can I switch to highlight that? I.e., can I move between first person and third person in order to highlight that shift? You could. You could. I don't think that you necessarily need to, because you can highlight self-centeredness through third person very well. Yeah, I think that you can, but I wouldn't necessarily do it or recommend it. Mostly because I think you can highlight the same things in third person through action, right? Ultimately, it is more effective to demonstrate self-centeredness through observation than it is through immersion. Because if you immerse somebody in a first person point of view, the reader is going to be much more likely to make excuses for the character. They're going to rationalize the main character's behavior because they, in some way, shape, or form, relate themselves to the main character, right? Because we all want to be the main character. We all want to be the most important person. We all want to be at the center of the story. And so if you give somebody a first-person point of view and then try to demonstrate their selfishness, ultimately what you're going to do is you're going to create conflict in your reader, because your reader is going to then want to rationalize their behavior. Thank you. I am 40 today. 40 years old. Wild. So I think that it's more effective to show self-centeredness through a third-person lens. But again, that's my preference. I don't like writing first person. I don't like reading first person. I have some friends who write really, really good books, and they write in first person, and it annoys me every time I have to read them. They are fantastic books, though. I should also mention, I think it's important to be just upfront with everybody that I write third person lazy. That is to say, I head hop all the time, and I just don't care. I'm interested in telling a story, and I'm going to tell you the story through a third person perspective, right? So you can be an observer to everything. And I'm going to highlight anything I think is important. And so if a character's feelings are important for the flow of the story, I will head hop to them and I will mention their feelings. Sometimes I will give you a limited perspective, right, to create a specific effect. I just don't bother with trying to keep the rules precisely. I don't. And I get called out on it sometimes, which is fine, you know. I'm certainly not a perfect writer. But I write third person omniscient lazy. Or lazy omniscient. I don't know. Sometimes I tell you everything and sometimes I don't. And sometimes I'm in one character's head. You know, I tell the story third person through the main character's point of view most of the time, but then sometimes I just expand and tell you how other people are feeling, or give you details that somebody else, you know, might notice. And it is what it is, right? I'm just trying to create as effortless a story as possible, right? One of my goals in writing is that what I'm trying to communicate comes through, and the story, which is the vehicle by which I communicate with you, just completely is like air, right? It's invisible. You know that you're breathing it, but you can't see it. So DC says, for me, first person is inherently better because it's much easier to immerse readers into the story because you can go deep into a character's psyche so readers can experience the story. But so that's an interesting comment, because what you're talking about is character-driven story, right? And character-driven story is different than plot-driven story. I should probably do a video on this, actually. If I'm going to do a video on characters, I should definitely mention this. Because plot-driven and character-driven are two different things, right? And we tend to major as a writer on one or the other. But a good story is going to have both, right? The problem is too strong of a word. One of the challenges with immersing a character in a story, a character-driven story, is that it very easily becomes tangled. Because humans are not intrinsically logical beings, right? We don't have a clear through line in what we do. And so you can do it well. It's certainly possible to do well. But it can be really challenging to write a story that's not just catharsis. And again, I think that ultimately stories that are just catharsis end up being rather pointless, and they leave readers unsatisfied. if we wanted to just be like, we live every day in our own heads. And so indwelling a character and getting deep into their psyche is often more frustrating for a reader than it is helpful. Now, if you can balance, and I'm sure you do, DC, if you can balance the character-driven story with enough plot, then it can be good, right? Because then you're really just exploring, how does the character arrive at their destination, right? How do they arrive at the decisions they're going to make? And you can really communicate some cool things to the reader through that. We just have to be careful that we don't, through delving into the character's psyche, that we don't leave the reader in a worse place than where we found them, because that is incredibly possible. In fact, I would argue that the majority of fiction today does that. It leaves the reader in a worse place than when they picked up the book. And I think that's a shame. I think that's not helpful. All right. So it's almost 8 o'clock. We are going to get into our first sprint here. I do love talking about writing and books and all of this stuff. I think it's really interesting. And I think I will do a video on character development. Or maybe on plot-driven versus character-driven. It's interesting. Recently, there has been this massive push in the literary world to write character-driven stories. But what's fascinating is that the more character-driven a story becomes, the less relatable it is. Because the more character-driven a story becomes, the more you reveal the ugliness of the individual, right? The more flawed they become. And the less a reader is going to want to relate to that character. And as soon as your reader decides that they're not going to relate to the main character, your story is going to have problems. On the other hand, it can be very effective to give a relatable character with just enough of a flaw that it's clear and obvious, but not so much of a flaw that the reader then backs off, right? And stories like that can do really, really well because they hook the reader, keeping them engaged in the story, and then they go through and they peel back layers little by little, right? Without ever letting the reader off the hook. So stories like that can be really good. Yeah, a lot of other authors have very different opinions than me. I argue with my friends all the time about this stuff. A lot of it comes down to preference. A lot of it, even more of it, comes down to worldview, right? What do you believe about the world? And how does that manifest itself in the way that you write and the way that you engage and the ideas that you deem acceptable or unacceptable? And I think worldview plays a huge part in this, right? It's also important to understand, are we talking about literary fiction or are we talking about general market fiction? I'm almost always talking about general market fiction. I don't love literary fiction, and I think that the majority of people who are trying to set out to write are better off aiming at a general market target, because that's probably the only way to become sustainable in the long term. So it is, but it is worth saying that there are a lot of other people with a lot of other opinions, and I would be happy to. I am always happy to debate these ideas, with the understanding that everybody's got an opinion about it, and there isn't a right way to write. You can write however you want. The question is, will other people be interested in reading it? And one of the things I'm always trying to optimize for in the way I think about writing is, how do I get other people to love this as much as I do? And that, I think, is probably the single most important question an author can ask. Let's make a differentiation here between an author, which is somebody who writes and sells books to readers, and a writer, somebody who writes for the creative expression. And I think there are a lot of people who write, and I think there are people who want to be authors. And I think those are very different things. Chat is not trolling. Thank you, Busy Bard. It is my birthday. I am 40 years old. And I need to start writing, because if I don't, I will not. All right. So we're going to be kicking off our first sprint here, and we're going to be seeing how far we can go today. All right, folks. This is going to be sprint number 1. Let's go ahead. Oh, why is my chat not working? What the heck? Boo. All right. Sorry, everybody. Now I got to fix this. Okay. So, somebody say something in chat. And let's see if it shows up. Boom. All right, so chat is now showing up again. Sweet. I don't know why that wasn't working, but it wasn't working. Oh my goodness. What do you guys say we just take the day off and go play a video game? No? Oh, bummer. Okay, I guess we have to write then. All right. Sprint number 1. Let's get started. I don't know how to start. I don't know how to start. Maybe I should turn this into a Borderlands 4 stream. Oh man. Wild. You know, some days the resistance is just really strong. Today is a day when the resistance is really strong. Have you guys read The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield? What happened to my chat? Chat just went white. So if anybody's typing anything, I cannot see it. The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield is it's pretty good. I don't love everything that Stephen says, but and I don't love his writing, actually. He has a sort of caustic style that's not my favorite. But he's written some really great stuff, including The Legend of Bagger Vance, which was really good. Goodness, I'm having all sorts of trouble with the stream today. It's like the universe is telling me to just log off. No, but I actually am having a bunch of trouble with the stream. I don't know if it's... Okay, that's super weird. Have I been coming through this whole time? I think it is a sign. I think it's a sign that I should just go do something else. Anyway, in The War of Art, Stephen Pressfield talks about resistance, which is this sort of invisible pressure to that keeps us from writing. And what I've come to discover, I have a bit of a different opinion than he does. Resistance is absolutely a real thing, and sometimes you need to push through it. But sometimes also it's just your brain's way of telling you that there's something wrong with your story. That there's something wrong with what you're trying to write. Yeah, it could be a test to see if you're going to be faithful to your goal. That's true. Really what I want to do is I want to go hang out with my wife. That's what I want to do right now. Maybe I should go and drop off. Oh, no. She's not doing that today. Ugh. All right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go get an apple. And then I'm going to be back. And I'm going to maybe continue the stream, and I'm going to maybe not. But I need to walk away from my desk for just a second. And then I will be back. So stick around, and we'll find out whether I'm going to be streaming today or I'm not. We'll see. All right. I'll be back in a sec. Well, I'm back. And I don't think I'm gonna go find something else to do because there's no way. But Charles, I totally agree. Actually, it's super helpful because so often we feel like we're just completely alone in it, you know. And most of the time when we talk about writing, we really do talk about the like best of it, right? Because we're excited about it and it's the thing we love, and like, but the reality is that it just sucks sometimes. It's hard, you know? I always feel so incredibly fortunate that I get to write. But sometimes forcing it is just not the right move. Sometimes it is. Sometimes you need to just say, you know what? I don't feel like writing, so I'm going to sit down and I'm going to do the work, right? And sometimes there's just something that's not quite right. There's something in your brain that's not clicked in. I don't know how to really describe it. Like sometimes it's just better to say, you know what? I'm going to go with the flow and I'm not going to try to force. You know? Even when you love what you're doing, sometimes it's just hard. And today is one of those days for a whole variety of reasons. You know? It's my birthday and I'm 40 and I've got all sorts of complicated feelings about it. And this morning I was plotting and I feel like my plot is not quite there yet and I need to figure out why. Like I need to figure out this transition. I've hit the midpoint in the book and I need to figure out the transition and what trajectory I'm setting all of the characters on so that I can wrap everything up. And I'm figuring that out. And what'll probably happen is I'll probably step away and I'll do some other things. And then I'll come back and I'll continue writing. And I fully expect and plan on writing this afternoon, even if I'm just finishing out this chapter that I'm currently working on. Hello. I don't know why this is on your page either, but hello. So I think I'm going to say thank you so much to all 12 of you who have jumped on, to everybody who has gotten on this morning. Thank you for that. And I will probably be done with the stream for today. I don't know. Maybe I'll be back. Probably not, but maybe I'll be back. I do know that I'm gonna keep working on my writing today, both internally and this afternoon in my afternoon session. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. It is my birthday today, so I'm gonna go and I'm going to go do something else, right? So thank you all so much, and I hope you have an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. I will see you tomorrow. I will be here tomorrow. We will be back to it. We'll be trying it again and see how we'll see how it goes. So thank you all so much. Seriously, you're fantastic. I hope you have an absolutely wonderful, wonderful writing day. So I'll see you.